Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
And we're all set, cocked, locked. Your dial is set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Jason's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. Rich Scheben's with us in Montana. I'm Vincent Finelli, and I'd like to make a comment before we get started. Democracy is alive and well in the United States of America. Democracy is two wolves and one chicken deciding what's for dinner. Mob rule is democracy. We have mob rule in America right now, and we have had for about a week. What you're seeing is the combination of 1775 and 1861. The first American Revolution began in 1775, and the first Civil War in the United States was in 1861. We are now in the Second American Revolution with the government against the people, and the Second Civil War with the people against corporations. The government started shooting at protesters with tear gas, grenades, and rubber bullets. Then escalated with riot gear and started shooting at civilians on their own porches with marking rounds. Now the federal government has escalated with over 13,000 National Guard troops and armored vehicles of war and M16 rifles. The people have shot back. The shooting war has just begun, with cops being shot in the head in Las Vegas and 4 cops shot in St. Louis, Missouri. That's where we are today. Welcome, Rich Scheben.
Well, thank you, Vincent Finelli. I've got about 8.5 hours worth of material to discuss, so let's go for it. I think you wanted to discuss or play an audio tape today.
Yeah, Jason, are you ready with the audio? Okay. So I've referred to a guy who wants to be president of the United States, Joe Biden, from the first state, that would be Delaware. I've referred to him as Jumpin' Joe because he would change his vote or his position, and he'd flip-flop for it and against it many, many times early in his political career. He's known as a plagiarist because he plagiarized many things that he said from other people. And he would deny it, and then he would have to admit it. And you'll hear that he went to, in this short clip, it's a collage of many people talking about Jumpin' Joe the plagiarist. And you'll hear one person say that he went to the University of Syracuse. No, he did not. It's Syracuse University. It is not the University of Syracuse. Some people get that wrong. But I'm here to tell you it's not the University of Syracuse. It's Syracuse University. Jason, if you're ready, we'd love to hear this clip about Jumpin' Joe the plagiarist, the guy who wants to be president. Think twice about supporting this guy going forward when you hear this. This is the truth. Please play that.
Senator Joseph Biden may have more explaining to do. The new questions stem from taped remarks of Biden during an April campaign appearance in New Hampshire.
I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school and in fact ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only needed 123 credits.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding political science student in college.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Joe Biden ranked 76th in a class of 85 at the University of Syracuse Law School. I mean, this guy comes off this whole thing as a flyweight.
Now Biden says Newsweek is right. His memory had failed him.
And I'd be delighted to sit down and compare my IQ to yours if you'd like, Frank.
Joe Biden was victimized by the truth.
Bye-bye Biden. He may not know it yet, but I think this is going to be very difficult for him to recover.
Is Joe Biden dead meat, yes or no?
I think so.
Bob?
Terminal condition.
Terminal. Eleanor?
Yes, unless he comes in third in Iowa.
Morton?
Dying.
I say dead.
Democratic presidential candidate Joseph Biden today faces a controversy. 3 weeks ago at a debate at the Iowa State Fair, he used phrases identical to those delivered by British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock.
Biden seemed to be claiming Kinnock's vision and life as his own.
Why is it that my wife, who's sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college?
Why is Gladys the first woman in her family in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university?
My ancestors who worked in the coal mines in northeast Pennsylvania don't come up after 12 hours and play football.
8 hours underground and then come up and play football.
It's because they didn't have a platform upon which to stand.
There was no platform upon which they could stand.
The notion that every thought or notion or idea you'd have to go back and find and attribute to someone, I think is, quite frankly, ludicrous.
The problem here is that Senator Biden told his audience he'd just been thinking about these things, and he failed to give any credit at all to his famous British speechwriter.
You know, I was thinking on the way over here. Now that's a little too much, because as you point out, what's behind the words? What's there? And a lot of people, the rap on Biden has always been that it's just a surface.
I should have said, to paraphrase Neil Kinnock, it's the only time I didn't, in all the times I've ever used it.
But CBS News found a tape of a second instance.
It reappeared in the New York Times with a new charge, that Biden had appropriated a famous litany from the late Robert Kennedy about what the gross national product cannot measure.
It cannot measure the health of our children.
The health of our children.
The quality of our education.
The quality of their education.
The joy of their play.
For the joy of their play.
Biden gave Kennedy no credit. He has also quoted or paraphrased John Kennedy, Hubert Humphrey, and British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock, all without credit.
Joseph Biden admitted today that he committed plagiarism when he was in law school. He said it was a mistake, but that it was unintentional.
He quoted 5 pages of someone else's work without proper citation.
I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again.
He was given an F.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I've been dumb.
To the political community in Washington, it all seems of a piece. Plagiarism at law school, plagiarism on the stump.
The great communicator. Strike that. The great imitator.
You don't steal verbatim, or when you do, as he did 99% of the time, you give credit.
Biden's critics say he sells himself as a man whose words and visions can inspire a new generation in politics. But if the thoughts, phrases, and visions really belong to others, it's a form of false advertising.
Is it a wise idea, though, to take something that personal, anyway, from another politician and try and appropriate it to your own campaign?
I think it was a stupid thing to appropriate material that was really very personal, that was someone else's.
Most people didn't know who he was. You know, Joe Biden, and now they're going to say, oh, yeah, he's the guy who plagiarized. That's
a lot of
their
people.
first. Politically, that's devastating. These clips are devastating. He looks like a Joe Biden wind-up doll with somebody else's words coming out.
If they're going to do things that are stupid as well as immoral, then they're probably too dumb to have the job of president.
The voters are going to have to decide whether he was dishonest or dumb.
That's Jumpin' Joe Biden, the liar and plagiarist. And is
hey, Vince,
that the guy?
I got to jump in here real quick, please, before the break. You know, unfortunately, folks, we have a situation in America where truth and justice comes from the person or the institution who has enough money to pay off the lawyers and judges who are bought and paid for in so many cases, including the media, to buy the sanctioned message narrative with subjective emotional opinion. So when we sue, we should create a precedent now that when we sue the government, we get to sue the big corporations because we have a fascist state that Donald Trump inherited. Big government and big has merged with the big corporations from every level, municipalities, state, federal, the whole works. The whole system is rigged. I mean, even Micah Brzezinski, if you recall, the media's job is to control exactly what the people think. And remember, Cuomo, not too long ago from CNN, says it's illegal to possess Podesta emails. Quote, what you learn from us. Okay? What you learn from us. So what you learn from us is what he's saying. This is we're in a Twilight Zone episode. What it really boils down to is American patriots, conservative authors, alternative media are doing the work that the mainstream media, the elite academia, lawyers, judges, politicians, bankers, intelligence agencies, including the FBI, the CIA, the DOJ, and the State Department, will not do. They are spending your money, your taxpayer dollars, on their cover-ups and malinvestment. And that's where we are today. Thanks for letting me get that in, Vince. Go ahead.
So the point that I was making is, do you really want to have a guy like Jumpin' Joe the liar and plagiarist to be in the number one position in the world? Is that what you want? A guy who says he makes mistakes and he's going to make more mistakes. And that was when he was a little younger than he is now. So he's been like this for a long time. And if you want to see, is this guy really lying? Just go do this. Go to your favorite search engine and type in the words Joe Biden. And then click on images and look at his hair. He's got more hair now than he had 20 years ago or 30 years ago. How's that possible? Okay. He's had reconstructive surgery on his face. He is lying to you the way actors and actresses lie with their plastic surgery. He's doing that. He is trying to look like the best he can be to fool you. He is dangerous. He's dangerous. Do you want Jumpin' Joe the plagiarist and liar going face to face with, let's say, Vladimir Putin? Do you want him to be even arm wrestling Vladimir Putin? Really? He's a lightweight. He's a liar. He's known to be a liar. And he's a plagiarist. And both of those, lying and plagiarism, are both lies. That's what politicians do. And he's running for president of the United States. Now, I'm not saying that the guy that's escalating the protests and riots in the United States is the best guy either. But he's best of the two, I think. We'll be right back. The word de facto means not an official law, but what happens in practice. So it sounds to me like President Donald Trump gave a de facto license to start shooting because he called the mayors and governors weak, fools, and jerks. He's also called up the military to protect Washington, D.C. About 250 troops to patrol around the White House in Washington, D.C. He's escalating. The roads around the White House are closed right now. So, what are they? Well, Constitution Avenue, 17th Street Northwest, 15th Street Northwest, and H Street. So these are streets that are closed around the White House. The military's there. They've got military trucks, trucks of war. And where'd they come from, by the way? Where'd they come from? Well, I've noticed, in our area in Missouri, there was a buildup of the National Guard trucks, trucks and tractors and vehicles. Lots of vehicles have been staged here in Missouri. Now, some of these vehicles were brought from overseas during the Iraq conflict, and the Congress ordered twice as many as the military wanted. Twice as many. So here they sit, and they're ready. They've been deployed all over the country. Sheriffs have been given the option. Y'all want one of these free armored vehicles? We got plenty of them. You just get it. Come get it, fill out the paperwork, and you can have a military vehicle with a machine gun turret on the top. Without the machine gun. You can get your own machine gun, I guess. And that's what happened. So there are lots of these armored vehicles. And now you know what they're being used for. You know, a lot of people said, well, really? Why does the sheriff need an armored vehicle? Well, they're being deployed right now. This is scary stuff. And the president is saying, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. The shooting already started. 4 cops shot in St. Louis, 1 shot in the head. So it's about as serious as it can get. Las Vegas, 1 cop was shot in the head. So if you think about this, as the government escalates, there are a lot of people with guns in the United States of America. A lot of people. Long guns, meaning rifles. A lot of rifles, a lot of hunting rifles in the United States. And if the government tries to say, okay, listen, y'all can't have guns because he's starting to shoot the cops, that's when the real shooting's going to start. And people are taking sides. There are people that think the government should crack down. There are people that think that the rioters actually have legitimate reasons. Because, and who caused all this? What was the straw that broke the camel's back? Well, that would be Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis. He protected the cops. He didn't arrest them right away for the murder of George Floyd. Had he arrested those 4 cops right away, and had he had a bullhorn and a press conference saying, all right, you're right, it never should have happened, we're going to clean house, we're going to clean the police department top to bottom, you people are right, and we started now, and those 4 cops are in jail right now. Had he done that, America would not be ablaze. And who is he? He's a Jewish mayor, according to what I read yesterday. He's a Jewish mayor. He's a lightweight. And he mismanaged the whole thing from top to bottom. He's the reason, Americans, that America is ablaze right now. He's the straw that broke the camel's back, in my opinion. Rich Scheben?
Yeah, I'm going to comment after this on the next segment, Vince. I have a lot to say. I have a lot of evidence. I have some articles.
Okay.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I want to add to that after the next break, please.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. Rich Scheben's with us. 2 hours. We're going to be talking about America's on fire and why. We'll be right back. Rich Scheben's with us. And at the bottom of the hour news, if you were listening, you heard that boxing great Floyd Mayweather is paying for George Floyd's funeral. He's agreed to pay for it all, and the family has accepted the offer. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. Why is it that Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis, Minnesota, didn't offer to pay for the funeral? Because his police department murdered George Floyd. 4 of them all complicit, in my opinion, in the murder of George Floyd. And they didn't even have the decency to offer to pay for the funeral. See, that's why people are rioting. And for a lot of reasons. I agree with a lot of the reasons why people are protesting and rioting. I don't agree with all the slashing and crashing and bashing and burning, but I understand why people are furious. And they should be. At corporations, and at greed, and at the government, and at the educational system, and everything else that's wrong with this country. Rich Scheben?
Well, thank you, Vince. I'm going to need a lot of time here, please, if you don't mind, because time goes just so fast on this show. You know, I agree with pretty much everything you said, but I want to put certain things in context and talk about, you know, a lot of the fakeness, the corruption, the manipulation of almost everything behind the scenes. And I think a lot of people, I think it's a compilation of a lot of stuff. Now, I'm going to mention some articles, and I'm going to make comments, and I'm going to take this whole segment to do it, and I'll probably need more segments to put this in perspective, okay? We've had the delegitimization of work. We have a very healthy fascist system that Donald Trump inherited, where our own DOJ, never mind our whole system of rule of law, has been corrupted, including the lawyers, the judges, the DOJ, the CIA, the FBI. We've talked about this till we're blue in the face, thousands of articles. Here's another article. Biden staffers donate bail to Antifa. Next article, Trump, the United States will designate Antifa as a terrorist organization. President Trump should have done that 2 years ago. Next article, Antifa caught on video handing out cash to violent operatives in Columbus. Next article, YouTube millionaire spotted among looters at Arizona Mall. Folks, what we have is the aristocracy, the very wealthy, mostly white people, literally trying to hold on to the status quo and create a caste system, a formal caste system, where we don't have a middle class. Okay, most of this is staged, most of this is bought and paid for, and words come to mind like brown shirts, black shirts, and mercenaries. Now, here's another article. Trump signs executive order stripping social media companies of liability shield. Unfortunately, he's planning on using the FCC. It's kind of like the fox guarding the hen house. But at least he's trying to do something. Trump is surrounded by treason, sedition, and cowards. I'm telling you right now, if we had Hillary Clinton in office, forget about it. It would be 100,000-fold. Remember, Hillary Clinton said that politicians, and she's talking about President Trump here, is not above the law, but yet she won't accept a subpoena to turn over more evidence while putting themselves and illegals above the law. It's hypocrisy, it's double standards, it's bought and paid for system. So the people are not just angry at the Minneapolis mayor, not just angry at certain police, they're angry at a corrupt system. And when you look at the cops in Democrat-run cities and states, their authorities are telling them to stand down on certain crimes and certain groups, and Antifa comes to mind. So when you pick and choose what to enforce, who the winners and losers are, you lose credibility. And this is exactly what's happening. Next article, Pennsylvania officials admit duplicate ballots were mailed out to voters. This is corruption at the highest levels, and these idiot Democrats literally want to do mail-in voting. Next article, Georgetown parents pleads guilty to fraud for college admissions. You know, folks, it's amazing that the Democrats, the left, expect people who have never been to college or have paid off their college debts or are still paying off their college debts. They want them, which is you, to have to pay college student loans who are over-leveraging themselves when 90% of the degrees are worthless. That's called malinvestment. But these wealthy folks can bribe universities at every level in every department for their kids, fake scholarships, fake test scores, fake test SATs, fake degrees, and they can buy everything. You see, this is what happens. Truth and justice now comes from the people who has the money to pay off the lawyers and the judges who have their hand out, and not all of them. There's some good ones out there, to buy the media narrative that are sanctioned, approved messages. That's what we have. Now, Mr. Floyd, what happened to him is absolutely wrong. It's absolutely terrible. But I also want you to think about the coincidence that now all this COVID-19 stuff is starting to die down a little bit. How come when Joe Biden said, let's see, he said he was being basically tarred and feathered for saying, you're not black line. And all of a sudden this stuff happened. And George Floyd worked with the cop that basically pushed on his neck, I think in more than one job for a lot of years. You know, as we can see all these scripted lines coming from the ACLU, the SPLC, Media Matters, Black Lives Matters, MoveOn.org, mostly paid for by the George Soroses, the Bill Gates, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, you know, the cabal. And basically they're taking the little guy hostage and making the super wealthy, the powerful, create everything. It's the aristocracy playing and conning the people to hold the narrative. I mean, the Fed's even talking about a 50% reduction in GDP this quarter. I'm going to talk about some other articles, and it's all in the same context, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? Republicans 10 times more likely than Democrats to say COVID-19 death count is overstated. See, this is basically the powers that be are manufacturing the perception of a phony political, economic, social ideology. This is why we always say, don't believe us, do your own reading and research. Next article, nursing home residents 23 times more likely to die in Democrat states. How come all your parents and grandparents, thousands of them that died in the blue Democrat states that got transferred to nursing homes that shouldn't have been, where there's even proof that people who had the disease was being hired to go into the nursing homes to spread it? I read these articles. How come the whole country is not upset about all this? It's all connected, folks. Next article. The CDC slashed COVID-19 fatality rates to a fraction of earlier estimate to justify lockdowns. That's how they control you, through fear. The CDC initially came out with mortality rates of 3.4%. Well, it turned out to be 0.26%. And then when you take out the people 75 and older, I hear it starts with 0.000 and then the number. Next article. New York's largest hospital system says ventilators may have caused thousands of COVID deaths. I've read this many times. How come the people aren't storming? How do we believe hospitals anymore, ladies and gentlemen, or the CDC or the NIH or the FDA or the doctors? If certain people are willing to be bought and paid for, how do we believe them? Psychiatrists wrote 86% more prescriptions for psychotropic drugs during the lockdown months. We all know, I was a pharmaceutical rep for a very corrupt company. I was in the industry for over 20 years. I've talked about this thousands of times on the radio. We have literally enabled and protected the most corrupt companies with liability immunity. by enforcing fraud and illegitimacy and fascism. I've gone through all this. And the power and certain idiots not only demanded to lower the bars of standards and expectations for a job, they've eliminated any criteria like hard work, proven results, and qualifications, and doubting their own value by demanding no protection, rights, and restitution under the rule of law who the people are protected. We've literally given runaway power to the fascist system of big government and big corporations. Speaking of pharmaceutical companies, Moderna, that biotech firm, they were supposed to come out with this great vaccine. Well, how do you create a vaccine for a so-called virus that comes out with mutations that's geoengineered with different delivery systems? We have all this information, like I mentioned, over the weeks and weeks and weeks, including just now, with fake morbidity and fake mortality. It's not that I'm saying it's a fake disease. I'm just saying that everything is taken out of context in order to create infighting and chaos and fear. And that's how the aristocracy, very few people, are managing us. We have to get our head out of the sand and read and research the math. I mean, this Moderna, they created all this hype, and guess what happened, folks? The executives cashed out with $30 million in stock options. And the other insiders sold $90 million and padded their own pockets. If anybody believes
don't forget
anything
Congress.
that comes
Don't
out of the
forget
mainstream
Congress.
media anymore, I mean, you got to have your head examined. Next article. Video, citizen journalist busts Democrat mail-in voting nursing home scandal in Texas. Next article. President Trump announced he's capping Medicare costs of insulin at $35 a month, and the media is silent. President Trump is doing a lot for this country, okay? He's a hell of a lot better than anybody else we could possibly have. He's a billionaire. He's going to have less money by the time he's done with his presidency, where every politician in the history of America has ended up with more. And I'm not done. After the break, I got some more articles I want to talk about, Vince, if that's okay with you, please.
Yeah, and insiders in Congress have made fortunes in the market as well. We'll be right back. Rich Scheben, please continue.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you allowing me to exercise my First Amendment right, where over 1 million combat soldiers died for that right, and we often forget that. Next article. Twitter fact checker claimed Trump administration are actual Nazis. I am blue in the face talking about this. The Nazis is on the left. The people on the right want freedom, liberty, the rule of law, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. The left wants an authoritarian state. They want communism. They want socialism. They want tyranny, dictatorships, totalitarian fascism. And I've given thousands of examples of how all this occurs and how we're being distracted, dumbed down, and divided by groups. I've given tons of examples how the left wants to control the media, and they hate citizen journalists. They hate the new media. They hate the alternative media. They want to control the police, and I've given thousands of examples, including today, how they let, especially in the blue states, they let Antifa run wild because they're bought and paid for brown shirts, black shirts, and mercenaries. I've given thousands of examples how the left does not want due process and how they want to control government schools and curriculums with Marx and Alinsky type things. I've read tons of excerpts from this. I've talked about how they're anti-homeschool because they want to keep people dumbed down and socially and politically indoctrinated. I've talked about how they want to get rid of private property. I've talked about how they want to continue all the strip searches, whether it be TSA or show me your papers for wherever you go. I've given thousands of examples of how lawyers and judges sold out the people, the little people, in the name of justice. I've given thousands of examples of election and voter fraud. We need to start acting like citizens with synergy and stick together and expect the government to work for us and not the other way around. This isn't an anti-government statement. It's an anti-too big, too corrupt, too over-manipulated, too overspending, too incorporated, too elite control, too anti-constitutional government. You get it? We need to stick together. Stop this, what gender you are, what gender you identify as, what is your shade of skin pigmentation or your religion or your sexual orientation or every other arena that they try to break us up to create division. I've talked about this for 9 frickin' years on the radio. I'm getting sick of it. We need to stick together. Next article. Chicago murders explode. Well, when you have all this stay-at-home order and you delegitimize work where hard work, effort, proven results, and qualifications don't matter, and you eliminate the rule of law, protection rights for the little people, and then you enable and protect with liability immunity the biggest corporations in the world that want to kill us, and you're sitting there defending your group and your hyphen and pronoun, while the big corporations and certain government entities get more monetary benefits by 1,000,000-fold than the welfare food stamp recipients. Next article, Australian journalist facing prosecution for reporting on Cardinal Pell sex abuse. Well, see, if you literally talk about pedophilia and you bring people to light, oh my God, that's against the agenda. Shouldn't be doing that. Next article, Virginia Governor Ralph Northam required masks after spotted not wearing one. How many times have I talked about practice what you preach laws? Do we hear that coming from Congress as a legislative tool? No, because it all depends on what freaking group you come from. Next article, Charlotte Dem councilman. No way GOP convention can take place due to the coronavirus. Are you kidding me? Really? Can't you see the agenda? Forced austerity, crashing the economy, getting rid of supply and demand, getting rid of cash, social distancing to make you submissive, having big tech control everything, eliminating voting legitimacy by rigging it and by doing it by mail, increasing domestic violence, depression, division, chaos, infighting, eliminating freedom, liberty, and the Constitution, food shortages, starvation, depopulation, get rid of free speech, forced vaccines, have an immunity passport, forced lockdowns, delegitimizing work. Can you see it, folks? I know this article, I know this audience can, but you need to tell other people. They're telegraphing every move. Next article, France's determination to end free speech knows no limit. Well, they want to require Facebook and Google and Twitter and YouTube and Instagram and Snapchat to remove all hateful content within 24 hours. That's called getting rid of free speech because they're going to say every little thing that's true and they're going to say, well, that's hateful. And I got some more articles after the break, Vince. Thank you for letting me exercise my First Amendment right.
So do you think your blood pressure will come down like 40 points in the next 6 minutes?
No, maybe the next 60.
Mine won't either. Class, we're telling you the way we really feel. This is USA Prepares, and sometime in the next hour I'm going to read a list of where the National Guard has been called out in the United States. How many? 62,000. 62,000. We'll be back. Everyone all set? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Rich, for years, you have been saying if they can do it, we should do it, or we can do it. And the police are using tear gas, rubber bullets, and the military has been deployed with M16 rifles, battle rifles with long barrels. Do you still think that applies? If they can do it, we can do it?
Well, I'll tell you something. I think that's one of the reasons I talked about all this Antifa and the brown shirts and the mercenaries and the people who are being hired. A lot of these reactions by the people are kind of are not legitimate. There are the super wealthy aristocracy paying for these mercenaries. That's what a mercenary means. They get paid. They will do violence for money. And this is what's happening. So as we continue to do this, we're giving excuses and alibis and justifications and smoke screens to steal more money from the little guy. We're not looking at the big pictures. The opportunities are going to the ass kissers, the yes men, the tattletales, certain groups, and the sellout of the little guy. When you delegitimize work and you get rid of truth, you have the wealthy people buying the narratives, and the little people are racking up the delinquencies, defaults, and bankruptcies. So we have the Democrat sabotage party literally creating most of these behaviors. Now, what happened to Mr. Floyd and what those police did are absolutely wrong. But I'll tell you right now, the great majority of police, Vince, and I don't want to debate this, are very good people. They get the finger thrown at them every day. They get spit on every day. This has been happening for years. A lot of some of them get power trips and go over the boundaries. But the majority of people that I meet in the police force, in the fire department, are good people. They're patriots. They care about serving and saving lives. Unfortunately, this politically correct environment we're in, certain people have been groomed to be desensitized for the wrong things, and they're cowardly offended for certain things, and they're overly sensitized for things that lower the bars of standards and expectations for jobs. That's why all this stuff about race and gender and sexual orientation is a big bunch of crap. If it's all the whites' fault, all the white males' fault, how come the media is not calling for the confiscation? I've said this a million times. For all the money that is owned by Bezos, Buffett, Soros, Zuckerberg, Gates, the Cuomos, Anderson Cooper, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, Cooks, Murdoch, Clinton, Jonathan Gruber, who calls America stupid for falling for propaganda. How come the middle class is being wiped out? I'm just telling you that we are, the powers that be who are paying mercenaries and brown shirts are not, when I talk about practice what you preach, when I talk about the same rules, laws, and accountability for everybody, when I talk about truth, when I talk about if someone has less consequences for their behavior because of what group they come from, then we should be able to do it too. But we have to look behind the shadows and see who's paying people. That's why I said earlier, when Democrat city authorities tell cops to stand down for some crime and some groups, and you pick and choose who wins, who loses, and what to enforce, there's no credibility in the situation. We have to look into it. Now, if Antifa and the super wealthy have created all this violence, then we have to have some, it has to be stopped because it's against the rule of law. The people who needs to be arrested are the people who are paying for these mercenaries behind the scenes as well as the mercenaries. I mean, how come it's un-American for the census to count how many Americans, it's un-American for the census to count how many Americans are in America? How come the Russians are now influencing everything, including all of our elections, and that's terrible, but any illegal from any country can come in and vote, and that's okay? Think about how they divide us by groups. How come you can identify as a female, as a woman, or be a 4-year-old girl, and you're a grown man, and if you don't play along, you're a racist, sexist, misogynist, xenophobe, bigot that's intolerant? How come illegals don't need IDs, but citizen needs an ID for everything? How come you can sexualize your children is acceptable if it involves drag queens, homosexuals, and transgenders? How come Joe Biden can use $1 billion of American taxpayer dollars to go to Ukraine and stop investigations on his own son, puts it an impeachable offense if Donald Trump inquires about it, while Obama is spying and running a coup of shadowing him around the world, committing treason and sedition? How come it's okay for U.S. citizens that have been fined for not buying their own health insurance, but are forced to pay through cost shifting illegal health care for the illegals, not to mention their car insurance and education? we've gotten to the point where common sense and logic is gone. It's all about group identity politics. How come high-skilled workers from other countries have to jump through tremendous hoops to get vetted here, but you can be a low-skilled worker with a criminal record, jump across the fence and be welcomed? How come politicians who say that the president is not above the law, like I mentioned earlier with Hillary Clinton, this is her last day to accept a subpoena, her last day to turn over evidence. But she's saying that President Trump is above the law while putting herself and illegals above the law. How come people who say there's no such thing as a gender, they demand the bar of standards and expectations to be lower for a job, demand no right to restitution under the law for the people who are affected, enable corrupt government and corporations with liability protections and immunity under the law, but still demand that a woman be a president, but genders don't matter? How come criminals are catch and release to hurt more people, but stopping them is politically incorrect because it violates their rights? See, when we point out double standards and hypocrisies, we're the controversial, racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, homophobe, intolerant, violent haters, etc., which I've said a gazillion times on the air over the last 9 years. But when the rule of law gets broken, and so many people are being fooled, and the people, the leaders for these riots at the top are being bought and paid for by the elite, well, that's when the rule of law is broken. We need to stand up. We need to call out these double standards and hypocrisies, like this article here. Planned Parenthood admits under oath for selling baby parts for profit. How come they're still in business when they're selling human baby parts for profit? Next article, Democrats demand accelerated legalization of illegals. Guess why, folks? They care about the vote. They want to kill babies and depopulate the country and the planet, but it's okay to bring in illegals because of chaos, infighting, and the vote. Next article, Massachusetts Lieutenant Governor. She had a party, broke her own lockdown rules in her $1.5 million lakefront mansion. And she broke mask and social distancing laws. See, practice what you preach laws. How many years have I been calling for it? What has happened? How many years have I been calling for citizen review boards to watch the police and many other government and corporate institutions? Nothing has happened because everybody's bought and paid for. Federal Reserve's new problem. You know what the new problem is? People don't want to go back to work because some people are making more money on unemployment. Well, that's what happens when you delegitimize work. When hard work, poor results, and qualifications don't matter, and you have the idiots out there doubting their own value in certain groups, demanding to lower the bars of standards and expectations, demanding no protection, rights, or restitution under the rule of law for people who are affected, that's what you get. Next article, we're being told to prepare for high prices at grocery stores. It's unlikely that shortages will only get worse. It's likely, pardon me. This is why Vince and I talk about having a hobby farm, 20 to 40 acres. Think basics, food, water, shelter, energy. The soil, the nutrients come from the soil. The vitamins come from the soil. A lot of old pasture soil has been mechanically and chemically through glyphosate and other fertilizers destroyed. You have to have your own garden. You have to harvest edible and medicinal plants. Okay, we need, got to get away from municipal water and well water that's in old pastures. It should be up in the mountains and the hills. I've talked about fluoride and chlorine and pharmaceutical drugs and other poisons countless times. I mean, even China labels it as a pesticide. We talked about the cancer and how fluoride is often a main ingredient in rat poison. Okay, it makes people sterile, makes people docile. These poisons have a reason for being what they are. We need to think about shelter. All right? Right now, there's the lowest interest in the history of America, probably, for mortgage rates. Now, you say, well, what if I default, Rich? You just talked about defaults and delinquencies and bankruptcies going up. Yes, but if you buy a home right now or some land and you had your garden, you raised some animals, learned some skill sets, you live off grid, guess what? If you default, it's not any different than renting because interest rates are so low, you're basically paying all principal right now. Have some privacy, have a garden, raise animals, hunt and fish on it. Do whatever it takes. Start thinking outside the box. And energy is also important. Live off grid. All these smart meters create ill effects. We've talked about this many times. Remember the mayor of Democrat cities like Los Angeles are telling people, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to shut off your water and power. The Democrat politicians are totalitarian, tyrannical dictators. We need to build skill sets. We need to think self-sufficiency. We need the powers that be want to depopulate us. That's why I talked about all this agenda that's been happening from the virus. It's going to be hoax after propaganda, after false flag, after lie, after gaslighting, and it's going to happen every day. And it's not an accident when these things occur, like when Joe Biden says something stupid about not being black, and all of a sudden we have the next propaganda, false flag hoax to create more infighting and chaos. We have to realize it's not so much a left-right paradigm as it is the aristocracy managing and trying to control the serfs. And we have a billionaire president who's going to lose a ton of net worth, who's working for $1 a year, who's not perfect, and I sure hell know I'm not perfect, and I bet everybody out there is not perfect because we're human. We're imperfect sinners. But if we don't talk truth, if we don't question the corruption, if we don't admit that we're living in an emperor has no clothes society, forget about it. Forget about all those million-plus combat soldiers who died for us, for our freedoms and liberties. We'll be all gone if we don't stand up together as a people and forget about what freaking group we're in. We'll be back after the break, and I'm going to catch my breath, Vince.
Yeah, and I've got a comment about these groups. Rich Scheben, I'll be right back. Rich Scheben's with us. Rich, you mentioned Bezos, Zuckerberg, and Gates. And let's add to that list Bloomberg. All four of those are billionaires. And all four of them have the same belief system. You talked about group identity. 89 of our senators in Congress hold dual citizenship with Israel. 89. How can that be? How can we have someone representing the interests of the United States of America with a dual citizenship with Israel and the United States? And if you don't believe me, class, just type in Congress dual citizens. You'll find it. And I'm finding this prepareforchange.net. That's the website. And it lists them. And you'll find out which ones. Now, this is as of 2018, so it's a couple years old. Next thing, if someone asks me, so what are you? You know, what group am I in? I would say I'm an American. And if they said, no, that's not what I mean. I mean, what are you? I'd have to say, well, I don't know what you mean. What do you mean? And if they said, well, so what's your heritage? I would say, well, my grandparents on both sides were born in Italy. And if they said, no, that's not what I mean, I'd have to say, what actually do you mean? And if they said, well, what's your faith? I would say, well, I was trained as a Roman Catholic, but I'm not a very good one. Okay? So what am I? I'm an American. Now, if you ask other people in America who were born here, they might not have that same answer. They might list their belief system first. You know, people like Bill Gates, people like Bezos, people like Zuckerberg, people like Bloomberg. They might list their religion or their belief system first. So when you talk about group identity politics, you're right. This nonsense has to stop. If you're born in America, you're an American, and you must be an American first, with loyalty to America first, not second. So keep that in mind when you talk with people, you know, who have loyalties to a country outside of America. Now, I believe, for the most part, President Donald Trump is an American first. Adolf Hitler was German first. Now, I'm not drawing a likeliness or a likeness of Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. I'm not doing that. But I am saying that both really put their country first. So I'm not saying Donald Trump is Adolf Hitler or vice versa. I'm just saying that they were loyal, both, for the most part, to their own countries. And they darn well should be, as Vladimir Putin puts Russia first, as he darn well should. And that's what we need to do. That doesn't mean we need to obliterate everybody else. That doesn't mean we need to beat them up. But it does mean, when it comes to making decisions, what's the best thing for the United States of America? What's the best thing for us? That doesn't mean we can pollute the whole world. It doesn't mean we can destroy the world's oceans and air. But it does mean that America's interests come first. Moral interests. Any comments, Rich Scheben?
Well, yeah, we're running too much on emotion. We have to listen to other people's personal experience. You know, just like this Russia-Ukraine, P. dossier, Stormy Daniels, General Flynn, Mueller trial, Obamagate, Spygate, which the Obamagate, Spygate is absolutely real, but all this stuff, it's made up. Everything is phony. Everything's through second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand information, rumors, gossip, hearsay. There's no credibility in this. What we're doing is allowing the elite to get a free lunch. We're allowing them to redistribute our money from the little guy to them. We're allowing them to create precedents and loopholes and own and buy everything. We're allowing them to use divide and conquer strategies against us. Listen to who the biggest mouths are. Listen to who funds the most of these riots and everything. It's the nepotism. It's the elite. It's the wealthy. It's the entitled. It's the biggest people who get the most inheritance. We have literally had too many people who have sold out to the highest bidder. The rule of law has almost been eliminated. High government positions are spending our taxpayer dollars manufacturing the perception of their own self-importance and self-preservation.
Mediadite.com says, headline, quote, Reverend at St. John's Church says clergy was tear gassed to clear church for Trump's cheap political stunt. And what I learned was, in order for the president to get to St. John's Church, they had to tear gas to clear the streets. So, you know, there's a lot happening, a lot of very dangerous things happening. And the president, and I'm paraphrasing, said that if the governors and mayors can't fix this problem with the protesting and the rioting in this country, he will bring it to he'll come in swiftly. Kind of alleging that he's going to fix this problem quickly. This problem's not going to go away quickly, in my opinion. This problem is going to simmer for years. Very much like the Civil War. You know, even though the Civil War, or the War of Northern Aggression, or the war between the states, whichever you'd like to call it, even though it officially ended in 1865, the Southerners are still fuming over the Civil War because General Sherman's scorched the earth policy, where he burned farms and he burned houses and plantations and killed animals and set the railroad tracks on fire and bent the railroad tracks so that they'd be unusable, and they still are to this day, literally. If you want to see it, go to Drake's Branch, Virginia, and you'll see that where Sherman was, and he set fire to the tracks, heated them so hot, the men were able to bend them so they were unusable. If you want to see that, you'll see the scorched earth right there in Drake's Branch, Virginia, in Charlotte County, Virginia. So there are wounds that have been festering for a long time. And I don't think this is going to go away very quickly. And Rich Scheben said something very, very important. And that is, if you want to take anything away from this class, the number one message is there are lots of lies, there are lots of cheats, there are lots of hypocrites. But the number one thing that you need to do is get what you need right now. And it's my opinion that the supply chain is broken and is breaking more every minute. And with the rioting and the burning and the slashing and the crashing and the clashing and the busting and the burning, delivery people are not going to want to deliver. Stores are not going to want to open up. Factories are not going to want to open up. It's dangerous. So, and it's going to get more dangerous. So if you need it, you need to get it right now, whatever it is. Whatever it is. Spare parts, whatever. Because it may happen that it gets worse way before it gets better. So if you need food, you need to get it now. And I'm not talking about lettuce. I'm talking about pasta and cans and jars. I'm talking about getting it right now. If you don't have it, you got to be nuts not to get it right now. I don't mean tomorrow or next week. I mean right now. Right now. And there used to be a PA system for one of the school systems I consulted for. And people would be called to the office like, yeah, Joe Dokes, report to the office now. Not now, right now. And that's what would be said over the PA system. Rich Scheben, any comments on getting it now?
Well, we absolutely have to get it now. We got to stop listening to the powers that be and start reading and researching and thinking on our own. The hypocrisy and double standards and brainwashing is making people deviate from their own personal plan. We have to remember that we're being used and played and conned and duped as pawns. The little people don't have representation. The Democrats and the rhinos, which are fake Republicans on the right, bought and paid for, are professional pot stirrers. That's what they do. Infight, chaos, create turmoil. That's create fear. The people are losing the battle biologically, chemically, technologically, informationally, psychologically. We are allowing the elite to poison us against ourselves. And that's why I mentioned, when Trump says he wants to give the American people back, give America back to the people, he means it. He's doing a lot of stuff, but 93% of the news from the mainstream media is negative against him because he's not representing the elite. The mainstream media is representing the elite. He's trying to represent us, but he's surrounded by traitors and cowards. That's why I often go through the Nazi left curriculum. They are the authoritarians. They want totalitarianism. They want socialism and communism. They want fascism. That's why I went through the whole list, controlling the media, police, due process, government schools, buying off lawyers and judges and selling out the people in the name of justice, voter fraud and election. I go through this often every once in a while, okay? It's just that my problem is when I prepare for a show, I have 6 to 8 hours worth of material in front of me, and I have 2 hours to do it. So I can't do it all. But we're giving free lunch to the elite. I mean, the banks get free money from the Treasury, I should say Treasury/Fed, and then they give us loans at 4 times the price where they're getting it for free. They're literally getting business to give out the loans. I mean, everything is totally fake and false. I mean, the banks and the brokerage firms are bundling junk loans together, selling them to individual investors and pension funds, and every industry is fighting for scraps with credit collapsing, and they're giving bailouts to the wealthy. So as the little guy pays 4 times more interest in these loans, while the brokers are paying 4 times less for junk bonds, the spread is going to the creative accounting brokers and screwing the little guy. This is why our discretionary and recreational purchases and income is going down. This is why I always try to coordinate financial, economic, social, and political rationale together so we can connect the dots so you can see what's really happening. because nothing means anything anymore. Even in the world of finance, valuations, fair value, fundamentals, anything to do with markets, liquidity, solvency, the definition of inflation and deflation, free market supply and demand, the lack of velocity of money, profits, nothing means anything anymore. This is why the Democrats want to vote for mail. This is why Joseph Stalin says those who vote decide nothing. Those who count the votes decide everything. Everything is a fraud to feather the nest of the wealthy. It's just like stock buybacks, which I've spent hours on over the years. It's not for the expansion of new products and services or research and development and for the people and new employees. It's to boost earnings per share so the executives can cash in their stock options. So the wealthy 10% gets more in the dividends, the executives get share stock buybacks, and then they create more debt for acquisitions and mergers, which is consolidation, which fires more people. It has nothing to do with what's best for the people. It's all a smokescreen. It's all fake and phony. Every bit of it is an entitlement for welfare, government, jobs, and big corporate bailouts. Everything. So the silent majority, we need to speak up, and we shouldn't be doing this with violence against ourselves. We're all, when I say ourselves, I mean the bottom 93%. I don't care what group you're in, what gender or sexual orientation or skin pigmentation shade. The silent majority has to speak up. We're not a spectator sport being an American anymore. Because the same people who are funding all this, the wealthy elites, Congress, they don't represent us. They represent the lobbyists, the special interests, the PACs. They don't even associate with us little people. That's why they call us irredeemables, deplorables, flyover country. They represent the funders.
Rich, when you go to get a haircut, do you have to pay for it?
Of course.
Do you know Congress doesn't?
Well, why should they? Because they use our taxpayer dollars. They have a bimbo slush fund. So when they have certain affairs and mistresses, and then they want to sue them, they have a slush fund that we pay for so they don't get sued. Why would they? Why would we expect them to get a haircut when they can legally hire anybody they want? And I'm all for adult mutual consensual sex, but don't charge the frickin' taxpayers for it. Vince?
Do you know that each one of these Congress critters gets almost $1 million to spend on top of their $174,000 a year? And then they get an 80% pension grant for the rest of their life. So they get, based on 2017 pay, a Congress critter gets $174,000 a year, and they get $139,200 a year if for a pension if they leave Congress. Can you imagine that? And if a member of Congress dies while in office, their family receives a payout of $174,000 or 1 year's salary. Not only that, each member of Congress gets an allowance, and that allowance is $944,000. $944,000. That's for things like furnishings, office mailings, personnel, whatever they want to do with it. And they have a franking privilege. Franking, F-R-A-N-K-I-N-G. They can send out mail to their constituents for free. Yeah.
Yeah, it's called
Congress.
free lunch,
and
guys.
They have reserved. Yeah, and they have free parking, reserved parking spots at Washington D.C. area airports. So if you want to park, you've got to circle and circle and circle and trying to find that spot, and then take the bus, from the outlying parking lot. No, they've got reserved parking. So and I mentioned they get free haircuts. So when you say they get free lunch, They get free lunch. They really do.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's an outrage.
And
that's why
we're sitting here fighting against our own different groups, hyphens, and pronouns. We can't even sue the most corrupt companies because Congress gave them liability immunity for fraud, illegitimacy, fascism. We don't even have protection or right to restitution under the rule of law. Ben, sorry.
Like Senator Roy Blunt of the corrupt state of Missouri protected Monsanto. Yeah. Roy Blunt. So yeah, these guys have protected corporate interests against the general welfare and against the general interests of we the people who pay for these Congress thugs to be there. They are working against us, and they are working for their own personal interests. These Congress parasites will put themselves before their own family. Absolutely. Their own greed is number one with these guys. That's why we're in so much trouble. Rich Scheben's with us, and you mentioned group identity politics for years. And I just want to say that in that line of discussion, Mayor Jacob Frey, the man who set America on fire, mayor of Minneapolis, Minnesota, the headlines say, and this is ChristiansForTruth.com, quote, Jewish mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, proclaims March 10th, Abortion Provider Appreciation Day. End quote. 95% of Jewish, according to the internet, 95% of Jewish Democrats support abortion. 77% of Jewish Republicans support abortion. You've mentioned group identity politics. There you have it right there. Those are not my words. Those are the words that I found on the internet. Jewish mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, proclaims March 10th, Abortion Provider Appreciation Day. That's insanity. He's just hugging this gal who is an abortion provider. So he's in the business of supporting people who kill people. He's also in the business of protecting the police who murdered George Floyd. Robert in Kansas, welcome. You're on with Rich Scheben and me.
Good morning, gentlemen. I wanted to say to Rich, you're so right about the devaluing of work. You did a Friday show. It was just you, and it was about work and women. I want to let you know, sir, how much I appreciate that. You're right on the money about how they've devalued that. You're just right on it. So I wanted to mention that what I think we're seeing, gentlemen, is a spiritual war and then the physical manifestations of that war. And I know that you guys are not the most religious instructors, but I do think that's what we are seeing. And specifically, Rich Scheben, I want to point you, sir, to a phrase.
Hold it, Robert. When you say we're not the most religious, does that mean we don't believe in God? What are you saying? I want to make sure that our class, because I absolutely positively do believe in God. I absolutely positively do say my prayers every day, and they are of thanks, but I do not go to the Holy Roman Catholic Church and genuflect on command.
And Robert, let me put something in context real quick with the amount of time, because when you mention devaluation, illegitimization, and women, I just want to put it in context. Certain people are lowering the bars of standards and expectations for a group, and that really insults the work ethic, the intelligence.
You've already said that, Rich. Hey, guys, Rich, I want to point you towards a term that Vincent has been using. It's called the synagogue of Satan. Okay, and that is why all this is happening. Okay, that's really all I got to say. I'll try to explain it if you want, but that's why I call it. It is a religious thing, guys, and I'm not saying you guys aren't religious. But Gwyneth Isaacs uses the term evil. Dr. Sheila uses the term evil. You guys don't necessarily understand. It's coming from a place of evil. It's not just greed. It's not just incompetence. It is concerted effort of an evil force. That's what it is.
No, we absolutely do believe it's evil. There's no question about that, Robert. Please don't put words in our...
Evil. I just don't know when it comes to certain formality. I'm sorry,
Robert,
Vince, go ahead.
Please, Robert, do not put words in our mouth. Do not say that we're not the most religious. That is not true. And please don't say that we don't understand evil. We absolutely, positively do. Do not put words in my mouth. If anything is going to frost me on this broadcast, that's it. That makes me angry, Robert. Do not put words in my mouth. Do not do that. Vince. Well, you should apologize.
I didn't mean it that way, Vince.
That's the second time I hung up on Robert.
Hey, Vince, you know, you and I have known each other for a lot of years. I've been on your show for probably 9 years, okay? Like you mentioned Monsanto, I would comment like 96% of Monsanto shareholders voted to not disclose GMO ingredients. Now, you know, I do a lot of reading and research. You know, I cite a lot of articles. You know, I use math. I use economics. I use a lot of truth. Let me just ask you one thing, since we're in the last few seconds of this show. And I don't know if I've asked you this bluntly, and I may have, but what percentage of what I say through the reading and research and math and finance and economic and social political issues that I study, when I say things, and a lot of it is published articles in the public domain, but let me ask you this. When I say things over the 9 years I've been on your show, what percentage of stuff do you agree with me that I talk about, that I cite, that I comment on?
Well, I can't say what I don't agree with, so I'm going to have to say all of it. I read a lot of the same material. I check and cross-check, sources, and so I'd have to say all of it. But here's something I do want to say, class. I want to make this very clear. So if Rich says something and I listen to it and I write down while he's talking about it what he said, I typically come back with, Rich, I believe I heard you say, or Rich, I think I heard you say. I don't say, Rich, you said, okay? Because I want to make sure that I get it right. And class, that's the way it should be said. I believe I heard you say, or did you say? So that's a takeaway from this. So I hung up on Robert for the second time. And I'm going to keep doing it if he keeps it up.